The Cuyahoga County Finance and Budgeting Committee meeting for Monday, November 5th, 2018. Will please come to order and the clerk will call the roll.
Calling the roll, Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon's absent at the moment. Mr. Tuma. Mr. Tuma's absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Schron.
Here.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
We have a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilwoman Baker is in attendance and also President Brady.
Okay, thanks everybody for being here. And the next item is whether there's any public comment. Has anybody signed in?
No, no one has signed in.
Okay, thank you. Next item is approval of the minutes from the October 15, 2018 meeting of this committee. Those minutes are in your packet. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilman Schron and seconded by Councilwoman Brown, and I would ask if there's any further discussion. And Ms. Simon is joining us at this time. The question is on approval of the minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. And the ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. And the first item on the in terms of legislation is ordinance number 2018-0012.
Ordinance number 2018-0012, amending section 704.01 of the Cuyahoga County Code to reauthorize the designation of the additional DTAC fee through December 31st, 2019.
Okay, thank you very much. We have Mr. Gus Frangos from the Land Bank here to present, so please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here with our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Bill Whitney. And if the council chairman members would permit, we have just a short presentation just to give you a quick smattering of our production over the years, some of the things that we're involved in, and of course, after that, we're open to as many questions as you may have, detailed or general. So with that, I will begin the, let me see if I have this correct.
Try that one. You want to move forward?
I want to go forward.
Okay, well, how you got to get that out.
I'm sorry, you told me how to do this and I still,
This one, not go forward.
that one, I see, okay. Just again, a quick smattering of our production over 10 years. 10 years has gone by fast since you last approved this whole experiment, and it's turned out to be a great experiment, a lot of production. As of November 2008, we have reached just over 7,000 demolitions, and that's throughout the entire county. That does not include, or it does include all of the demolitions. It includes the county demo fund, moving Ohio forward with the Attorney General, hardest hit funds, and all of it. We have facilitated the rehabilitation of 1,761 properties. We're very proud of that particular number because a lot of people still view us as a demolition company only, and of course we're not. We bring properties in, we triage them, we farm them out to qualified redevelopers. We develop them ourselves, and we use the CDCs as our neighborhood outreach to get these properties done in the communities. Overall, we've acquired through tax foreclosure and put back out either to the cities or to these redevelopers 10,758 properties. We have disposed of 6,570, and at the moment, we have 4,188 properties. Normally, we would not have that much were it not for the hardest hit fund program, which requires us to hold a property for 3 years. There's a whole big, long reason why that is, but we can dispose of them within the 3 years, but under very regulated circumstances, side yards, redevelopment. But in order for hardest hit fund treasury monies to pass through to the land banks, we have to hold them, we have to place a mortgage on them, and it has to season for 3 years unless we have a redevelopment. So that is we have a large inventory, and it's a costly process as well, because we don't want to be accused of being bad owners and landlords ourselves, so we spend quite a bit of money cutting the lawns, removing tires, boarding things up. And hopefully that's going to change in the years ahead once these programs and the county demolition program begins to morph and transition into housing and housing renovation. Let me see. No?
Yeah, that one. This,
Oh. Just some examples, and again, this is thanks to the council, because a lot of these things would not be possible if we didn't have the interconnectivity between the fiscal office, the treasurer, the development department, and the prosecutor. But these are some examples, and you're aware of them. I'm picking out some of the most prominent ones, but there are hundreds. If you recall, we had Randall Mall. That was something that years ago, former council president C. Ellen Conley, the previous development director, came to the county land bank and asked us to try to help work with the mayors of those two cities, Warrensville Heights and North Randall, to begin a long-term assembly project. And so fast forward to where we're at now. Of course, you know what the result is. We've assembled all of North Randall with the developer. We actually only reassembled 3 of them, Higbee's, Macy's, and then another Macy's parking lot. The developer did the rest. But again, none of these projects would be possible, and the jobs and the tax base, et cetera, were it not for our ability to assemble and ultimately for the work that you allow us to do. So that's a great example. Next to it, of course, is the Fisher House. And again, I would never have learned about it were it not for Councilman Schron. We came to a meeting and I got introduced to that very worthy cause. I had a son in the military, so it really resonated with me. But anyway, that's an example of where our research comes together. We begin to assemble. We strategically move things, vacant and abandoned properties, into tax foreclosure and ultimately bring them in. And it took several years, but we assembled a couple of acre and a half. And that property is now almost finished. 2 big extended stay projects, 33 units of relatively luxury housing for the families of veterans that have their loved ones, their combat injured loved ones at the VA. So they no longer have to be farmed out to hotels and expensive stays way far away from the VA. And again, there's many properties, many projects, but these are just some of the ones that we're particularly proud of. Here's an example. This is an example of East Cleveland, for example. This is the reverse now. Those projects were project-centered. They were assembly-based. Here's one where, over the years, the process of land assembly, the process of land banking, will allow us to turn something that has been dormant and unproductive for many, many years, and it's going to turn into something good based upon the research and the assembly we're able to put together. If you look at this, it won't make a whole lot of sense to you, but this is a 38-acre target area. It's right on the corner. It's on the confluence of Cleveland Heights, Cleveland, and East Cleveland. It is about 500 feet the way the crow flies from Case Western Reserve, all of the hospitals, and of course University Circle. On that one corner, on the left-handed corner, that's one that the county and the land bank supported a few years ago. It was Circle East. It's a housing, multifamily housing development, which is doing real well. But over the years now, this 38-acre area right next to these large institutions, we probably own about 3/4 of it now. We've assembled it through a operating agreement with the city of East Cleveland. And so those properties are being assembled, and we and hopefully ultimately the development department are going to put something together that will begin to see this otherwise unproductive area become very productive because of the institutions that are there. There's nowhere else where UCI, there's nowhere else where Case Western Reserve, for example, can go with housing that is even moderately affordable. So these are the kinds of things, this is a planning type of thing that will change that area of East Cleveland. So we're pretty excited about it. Here is something in Euclid. This is a situation where we have a long, dormant, dirty site. It's been this way for many, many years, 13 acres. And because of the land bank's ability to assemble these properties from forfeiture, we didn't assemble, this is just one property, but because of our ability to hold it, and to hold it for a period tax-free, and to be somewhat immunized from EPA requirements, brownfield liability, we're able to hold this to allow the developer to put his project together, and ultimately, this is a project where, forget the fellow's name, but we've already signed up Euclid, the city of Euclid's in favor of this, and we have done the paperwork and transfers that are gonna turn this into a nice development. It's a business that's, we're swapping property from a developer in East Cleveland, and he's coming here to Euclid because this site, as bad as it was, once clean, will be productive because it has rail and it has access to St. Clair Avenue. It's a large street, and so, again, these are unusual, but really important, formerly unproductive properties. Examples of housing, I'll be quick with this. This is how we get properties, typically. You see how they come in from tax foreclosure. They're have a lot of problems. Many of them are demolished because they're beyond rehabilitation. But there's no shortcut. We go in and we assemble them all. Sometimes something looks really bad, but it might have good bones. It just needs to be assessed. It needs to be triaged. So we do that. And once we do that, if a house has good bones, we create the specs. We put it into our deed and escrow program. If you recall, that's the program where we do the spec. We allow the person to go in, redevelop it, but we hold the deed. We don't want to transfer property and have somebody say they're going to do something, and then we got to chase them around. So we hold the deed. When they're done, they get the deed, they get the house, and we have a property that's back on the tax duplicate. That's one of the 1,700 that I was telling you of the housing projects that we facilitated. It's through that deed and escrow program, and of course some of the ones that we do ourselves. So this is how we get them very often. It's just mind-blowing. And then this is what they eventually turn into. There's some before and after pictures. And they come out very, very nice. We work with not only redevelopers, but social service agencies, churches, the city mission, anybody and everybody that needs to house people in affordable, clean housing. So those are some of the examples. And then lastly, our community development examples are special populations. That was one of the housing study subcommittees. It was special populations, and we were involved in the special populations part. If you look at the green picture, that's that's the land bank and its mission. It is a brick and mortar mission: fix houses, stabilize properties, demolish. But the other blue circles are all of the surrounding social service agencies whose mission may not be brick and mortar or housing. It could be reentry, it could be veterans, it could be aging out of foster care. And their mission is the wraparound services for those special populations. However, one of the wraparound services is always you have to live somewhere. So in these situations where the profit threshold is not as important as just the housing, that's one way that we can prevent houses from instead of going to demolition, if they have good bones, we're able to take them in, and philanthropy ends up helping the property get rehabbed without reference to whether they can sell it or whether it pro formas properly and things of that sort. So that's it in a nutshell. Some of the special populations, and we work with just over 70 groups now in this area. In the area of veterans, we work with, let's see, the picture on the left is Women of Hope. They bring women in from the commissary, and it's just for women. The other one is Purple Heart Homes. They're just for men, and that's a national organization. In the area of reentry and recovery, I think on the left, my left, it's Woodrow. That's a project that we combined and partnered with the county, the Adams Board. The one on the right is Jordan. They recovery and women that have been caught up in trafficking. Again, the lady in the middle there, that's her mission. She gets support also from the municipal courts that help deal with this. And so we're just a partner in that. And they've done a couple of housing. Single moms and homeownership, that is a program we call New Horizon. That's a partnership with the city mission. The city mission, as many of you know, may They have a large facility on the west side. It's called Laura's Home. So Laura's Home brings the women in. They're able to get back on their feet. And when the women are properly vetted, their needs are taken care of, and they're ready to live independently and they have work, they get the house from us, and then we all team up together, and it promotes home ownership. A small mortgage is put on it, but ultimately these are home ownership opportunities, everyone that we've done with the city mission. And so they're a great partner. Here's an example of one that we fix homes, but the main mission is not fixing the home itself, it's mentoring. King's Sons 820 is a gentleman by the name of William Foster. He's formerly incarcerated years and years ago. He's now taken on as a mission young men that are at risk. And he trains them how to build, trains them how to do all kinds of things, from environmental assessments to carpentry to laying concrete. And so they've done several homes with us as well, and we allow them to have them and resell them and put that back into his ministry. From our standpoint, the house got rehabbed, it's back on the duplicate, there's a happy homeowner, and so we're happy there. But the ability to team up with social service agencies, what we call non-traditional opportunities, is for us a home run, because we're not only fixing a house, but we're helping people and helping edify people as well. So that's it. If you have other questions, we're here. Bill can answer questions about our budget and things of that sort as well.
So can you give us a brief description of what this legislation does?
This legislation, if you recall, the last time we were here, the legislation takes the, for shorthand description, the penalty and interest from collected delinquent taxes and puts it into the, what's called the County Land Reutilization Fund. If you recall, that is the system that we put in place so that we were not taking direct taxes from the cities and the taxing districts, whether it's schools, library, RTA, port, and we were using that penalty and interest, combining it to create some kind of synergy and to be able to deal with these issues. So voted taxes, budget commission related taxes, those remain unaffected. We're not taking any money there. It's like the Visa card. The minimum payment is $100. If you're late, you pay $125. It's the $25 late fee that we're arbitraging and we're working in here. Because of that, that's $7 million that we get annually. Because of that, I will say that that has created the infrastructure that has allowed us to bring in over $150 million in hardest hit funds over the 10 years. The Moving Ohio Forward money from the mortgage fraud settlements. If we didn't have that infrastructure built, if the county was not allowing us to have the professionals and the program that we need, we would not be able to service that stuff. So so that's what this funding is. It's $7 million that we decided to cap it at. Some years it's more, penalty and interest is more. Some years, I don't think it's less. Maybe one year it was less, but it was covered by a previous overage. But so we capped it at $7 million, and we are, what this legislation does is it's asking this council to reappropriate that for 1 year, and so that we can continue to operate with the DTAC. It has also allowed us to, these sales and some of these activities, it brings in a couple of $1 million a year just from our ability to try to be good stewards with that money and to be not only mission-based, which you clearly see that we are, but also revenue-based. We always have to have a conscious mind about trying to make these funds productive. So it's a balance, and that's what the legislation would do for the next year.
And I would just bring to the committee's attention that in the last round, we authorized this for 5 years, but we're only doing the 1-year authorization because there's ongoing discussions about working with the land bank around the possible development of a housing trust fund for the county, and so we want to do the 1-year authorization as a placeholder, and so we may then transition to a new program in which part of this money is used for the housing trust fund programs. So With that, I'm going to ask if there's any questions either on the presentation or on the legislation by anybody. Ms. Baker is first.
Yes, and thank you for your good work. I remember when this was first implemented. I've always had a concern about the penalty and interest that is coming, that, is perceived as not being needed, but actually that money would have gone to our schools, our libraries, our cities. It is not just money that is on the fringes, especially with the need for our schools always looking for book money and repair money and salaries and wages and all that. It's always been a concern that that 7 million that you're talking about today would have been a direct impact back, and especially to those districts who pay high taxes, get behind in their payments, make their payment good, but still have to pay the taxes and interest. That would have probably impacted communities like that more so than those that you're actually serving that need this impact. Having said that, I see that, you're doing really good work out there, and I know you need to get the money from somewhere. But I've always had that concern of where the money came from. And even though we only call it penalty and interest, it still is money that would have gone back to those entities that that are scheduled to receive it, like our schools and libraries, and especially our schools, because they take the biggest part of our tax base when it comes to housing taxes. So thank you for your work. Still a little concerned about that, but I'm glad to see that the money is being applied and you're doing a good job there.
Thank you, Councilwoman Baker.
And then Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Councilman Miller. Mine is more so around the presentation. The King's 820 program that was highlighted, I was just curious. We get a lot of, at least I do, I get a lot of conversations around the rehabbing of houses and incorporating our youth and our reentry population. So I'm just curious, do we have any idea how many houses have been rehabilitated by that particular entity? And is there any opportunity for growth or expansion? Are they within a certain community? So houses, and are they in a certain community?
We have, we of course look at it as a portfolio kind of a thing. There's all kinds of, but I would say with King's Sons in particular, half a dozen, maybe 10, the challenge there is not so much the houses, because we haven't, it's having somebody like William Foster, because you have to be on the site, you have to be able to order stuff, you have to be able to appear on time, somebody has to make sure that the students and the young men are there. And it's the same thing with our community service program. We work with the courts, and we rely on the it's a United Way agency, I forget the name of it, but somebody has to be there to make these programs work, because in principle they're wonderful. The Christian Missionary Alliance Church, for example, has done about another 7 or 8 or 10 properties, but they do it through teams that come in, teams of contractors, and they train people. So it's any number of different organizations that do it. Some do more, some do less, but the city mission is probably what I would say the best one, because they bring in, they incorporate not only trade professionals to get the house done, but they do enlist people within their churches, people within the community to try to learn a skill. But I put William up there because he's, this is his mission. It's young men and it's fixing the houses, where the city mission has got all kinds of programs and things. But so we do quite a bit, but it's hard to do it on a scale unless we had the people, if we had the committed. So I mean, one way to do it, and we've talked about this, is to have a particular nonprofit that is funded just for that. We had the gentleman, is it Maurice? Yeah, we had a gentleman who had a workforce development program. It was kind of off of Peter Lawson's fatherhood initiative. They would bring fathers in, they would bring other young men in, and it was a workforce development program. So the more people you have like that, and you can make it programmatic, that is something that would be worthy of more discussion and taking it to more to more of a scale. I forget how much Mr. Maurice Stevens has done, but he's done quite a few, and knows the system, he knows workforce development. That would be a way for me to suggest that we take it a little more to scale.
I guess the other question I would have, and thank you for that, because it's a program that I think is very valuable asset, but my hope is that we start to get a little bit more targeted as far as our focus is concerned, so we can have more measurable impact as opposed to spreading it out. So that was why I was curious if there was a particular community that Mr. Foster, is that right, was serving. The other question I would have is, have we looked at or done anything to kind of look at the projections for future abandonment of properties or vacancies? How are our future numbers looking with, are we able to make any projections or forecasts? Are we going up, down, maintaining? What direction do you see us going?
Mr. Chairman, to Councilman Brown, there's no question that the vacancy and abandonment is and has gone significantly down. Is there still more? There is, because it's a progression, I mean, something just doesn't go into abandonment and then it's gone, and there's a one-to-one ratio there. I mean, a property gets knocked down, 10 of them get knocked down, but 3 of them in the next year or in the next 2 years come back online, or they get foreclosed, or they're condemned. But the trend is down. I mean, we were talking in the beginning when we started all this of some 20,000 or more vacant and abandoned houses. That's probably 4 to 7. Where's Mr. Schramm? Probably 4 to 7. It's a hard number to identify exactly, but it significantly has gone down. I mean, you're always going to have things like fire damage and emergencies and stuff like that, but we anticipate probably another 1,000 next year, another 1,000 properties to come down through our programming, through the county's programming with the cities, probably another 1,000, I'm guessing. So put it this way, I believe it will be in a state where it's quote unquote manageable before the foreclosure crisis. I remember as a councilman, I always had houses that needed to come down, but it was never anything like 2008 and afterward. So I would say that in the next year or two, as we wind down these programs, it's probably going to be manageable. Will it be such that the communities are just all vibrant and good again? No. I mean, there's vacant lots are, they're not the best thing either. And so the challenge is to get them into side lots and to start to try to do developments and find people, as we are here, that would not normally do a rehab, but because of who they are and the special populations they serve, we just kind of try to keep that development going. As far as the targeting, and you reminded me by asking that, because the Hardest Hit Fund program is going to be ending at the end of 2020, and your funding, the county demolition funding, will be ending in 2020, I believe, right? We necessarily have to begin transitioning and using all of the funds that we're getting to target neighborhoods and to do it for renovation. And that's all the things that were in that housing study, all the things that were in there, except for maybe the human services things entirely, but things like access to capital, rehab, both commercial as well as individual rehab, senior rehab programs. All those things are things that we're going to be transitioning into in the next 18 months or so. So we have a strategic plan that we're in the middle of right now, and we've also engaged a professional to do an impact study for us, because that impact study will show the significant impact that the land bank has had, both on an econometric level as well as just on an amount of money that was leveraged level. So my desire is that with the strategic plan, it won't just go on a shelf and sit there, but with the impact study, people will see, that we've had $400, $500, $600 million of impact in the county. And so with that, we can get the community to embrace the fact that we're going to now get into rehab, and it's a good reason to do that. So we want to justify all that, but I don't know if that answers your question, but that will necessarily require much more targeting and analysis and research.
Okay. Ms. Simon is next.
Thank you. I have a question about potentially losing this revenue coming from DTAC funding and how that would impact the programs you just highlighted.
Well, this, I'm not sure I understand the question,
Well, if
Mr.
this is a
Chairman.
year contract that you've been, and if it's going to be different after this 1 year, potentially, the revenue, how it's being used, right? It could be, that could change. Would that impact the programs you were discussing today?
Mr. Chairman, to Councilman Simon, in post-2020, we anticipate that the DTAC, the $7 million will continue. That will support in part the infrastructure that we built, but will also go into direct programming. If that $7 million is removed or eliminated, then that's just how much more, that's just how much less program that we'll be able to put out there. But as Councilman Miller indicated, I understand this to be more of a placeholder so that we can then develop the housing program so that we can come back next year and put it back into a 4 or 5 or 6 year appropriation. That helps deal with a larger sum of money. If we, and that's how I would recommend it. I would recommend that if we have DTAC funds that are on a 5 or 6 year appropriation, that would allow us to put anywhere between, say, $20 and $30 million of money onto the street in increments of $4 or $5 million a year. But if we don't have the funding every year, then of course all that we won't have that. 1 year planning, 1 year, 1 year of funds won't get us too far. This has to be viewed as a long-term planning thing where we conclude that this is a good thing for the county and the DTAC needs to continue.
Well, okay, thank you. Well, it seems like if we're developing a new plan, perhaps the programs you're funding today won't be funded tomorrow. That was my question.
Oh, well, we won't be funding demolition, that's for sure. In 2020, we'll be funding it, but on a much smaller level.
Well, we'll see. I mean, if we're only doing a year because we're regrouping and we're developing a new plan, then perhaps what you're doing today won't be the same of what will be coming tomorrow, is what I'm trying to understand.
Demolition is the main one. Everything else we'll continue to be doing. We do a lot of housing. It's just that demolition happens to be an expensive ticket item.
Okay. So the second question I have is about Purple Heart Homes. What council did was to give you veterans money for veteran housing, but I don't see that featured here, and I want to see whether you're still using that money that we had allocated for that purpose. And first question related to that.
We have used that money with Lutheran Metro Ministries for a project in East Cleveland. We continue to have a program where veterans can come in, and if we have a market-based house, they get a 20% discount. We've done Women of Hope. Purple Heart Veterans is just one particular agency. And, you're talking about roughly a,
Purple Women of Hope isn't a veteran home, is it?
yes,
Or
it is,
So that's why you're using our veteran money for Women of Hope,
for all kinds of veterans.
Okay.
It's
but not Purple Heart, because
No,
that's
no,
separate
no, no,
funding.
no.
Okay.
Purple Hearts was just one program. It was
That's
one.
separate funding. I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
You're not using the county funds for Purple Heart homes, are you?
I don't think that we used. I think that the arrangements with Purple Heart probably preceded the county grant. I think it was like $50,000. So I mean, there's a limit to how much you can do with $50,000. But we want to recycle it, and we continue to use it amongst all the other programs and all the other monies that we put into our programming.
So it was supposed to be a revolving fund where you're going to continue to use that veterans money that the county gave you to keep rehabbing houses. And
we do, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. The money is fungible. It's not like in some kind of pocket that comes in and out. That money, we will always have our programming for veterans. They will always have the 20% discount program. And so, I mean, we're funding much more than the $50,000 that the county has given us. We've spent probably $500,000. So, but the $50,000 is just, another basis, it's another support for those programmings. So we're servicing the $50,000 and probably 10 times more for veterans housing.
Okay, I'm just asking about the county funds, because I'm seeing that Purple Heart's being featured and not what the county projects have been. Because at the beginning, you were showing those and featuring those, but that's okay. I was just
Right, yeah,
curious if you're
this is
still
not,
doing it.
This is just to show you the types of things that we do.
Okay.
This is not to say, these are all the programs that the county specifically directed us to do.
Well, I support this amendment or this ordinance, but I do say that if we're looking to somehow, you look at the schools, I'm looking at the state to fix that. I mean, the DeRolf decision came out in 1993, where we know that it's an illegal way we're funding schools. And obviously, that's up to the state legislative body that's failed that for a long time. So when we look at this money, we've got to take care of what's in our county, and not to mention the cut in the local government funding, which has helped devastate our communities. So for me, this makes total sense to be able to address the needs of the entire county that's, I believe, has been left behind by the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
All I can say about that, because I have heard Councilwoman Baker's position back when we were in the state legislature, and all I can do is commit to this council that we will try to be the best possible stewards that we can, knowing that funds are very valuable to students, libraries, all of that. So I hear the message loud and clear.
Okay. Vice President Jones.
Gus, I just wanted to highlight when you mentioned the type of work you did. You mentioned the former Commissioner Peter Lawson Jones, the Fatherhood Initiative, and Maurice Stevens, and the Reclaim nonprofit work, kind of all in the same breath. So I kind of just wanted to point out that Peter Lawson Jones and the Fatherhood certainly was what he founded, but Maurice Stevens' work was a council initiative roughly 5 or 6 years ago. We looked at the intersection of human services and economic development, and we wanted to help the reentry population find work. And what we did was we created ultimately 3 companies, socially responsible companies in the area of hair care, food services, and the rehabbing of homes. Just a little history. The rehabbing of homes through Maurice Stevens, the food is the Central Kitchen, which has really grown. They're on Superior Avenue. It's really developed over the years. The Signature Lounge in Euclid Avenue, they helped to allow the reentry population to be a beauty salon and help apprentice the reentry population in that area. I have to say the rehab with Maurice Stevens, it's still in a growing process. And you tell me as you work with them daily, it's my understanding that they are doing a little more lead abatement as opposed to the rehabbing of homes. Is that
Mr. Chairman, to Vice President Pernell Jones, that's true, and it kind of goes in spurts. But lately, they have done cleanouts. They have done, I believe, asbestos, not lead, but asbestos survey and removal, if I'm correct. Correct. It's mostly cleanouts. Yes, mostly and cleanouts. They were, when that Ariel Castro thing happened, if you recall, we needed to go in there and completely put suits on and clean that place out and make sure that, there was just filth everywhere in there. And his group, his young men went in there and with the suits on, and they cleaned the whole place out and did it very, very professionally. They're not always like that, but they do a lot of our trash out work right now, and they get the houses prepared for rehab. So, like I said, I think that's an area, as Councilwoman Brown said, where we can try to ramp up, where we can get workforce development to participate in that more. Because we operate in real time. That's our only challenge. We have the house now, we have to insure it now, we have to cut the lawn now, we have to change the lock now. It's not an incubator, but we're trying to make it an incubator. So if we have people and we have a program, that's the key to making those more or less robust.
So as we look to do things in the future, I expect the rehab to be continue to grow in its effectiveness.
Okay, thank you. Council President Brady.
I'm going to hold off the discussion kind of went in a different direction and thought I'm not going to I don't want to go back to where we were. But the council is aware that been working with the administration and with the land bank, trying to come up with a housing program. And there are some people have had briefings, and at the end of this week, I think a lot of people are going to be briefed. So we know we have to answer all these questions, get into all this stuff, and there are some unanswered questions, and there are different views about these things. But that work will begin in earnest in a few days.
And to Mr. Frangos, is passage on November 27th sufficient for this legislation?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman. It expires at the end of the year.
Okay.
If I could just have
Ms.
an
Baker.
opportunity to ask, you know, we're looking at your demolition of 7,000 and your rehabs of 1,700, and you're saying that the rehab is really the direction that you see because the demolitions are not going to be needed. What thoughts, or maybe if you don't answer now, is the private sector a part of your plan when you're talking about investing into homes, not to destroy, but to rehab and sell? Where does the private sector perhaps become a partner in some areas that could be an opportunity for them to do it without the government assistance, or at least with less? Has that been entered into your equation at all?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, to Councilwoman Baker, it has always been from the beginning. So like when we, in our deed and escrow program, as I said, we try to be good stewards. We get properties on a portfolio basis. We lose on some because we're trying to stabilize an area. But our objective is not to lose money all the time on our rehabs. And so the way we do that in our deed and escrow, which is probably 1,000 of those 1,700, just for discussion purposes, that's all, we bring the property in, we pay for the trash out, we pay for the door locks, we pay for the lawn cutting, and we pay for all the documentation that comes through tax foreclosure. So there's a cost to that. But when we transfer property in the deed and escrow private to a developer, that's all private money. So 1,000 properties at an average of probably $30,000 to $40,000 of economic activity for each house. That's some $40 million of economic activity, but it's all private. It's not county money. On ones that, where the private sector isn't picking it up, we sometimes take a loss, but on a portfolio basis, we make money. That's the objective. The other ones, we do some ones in-house, we fix them, we spend the money up front to fix them, and then we sell them. Sometimes we break even, sometimes we don't, sometimes we get a couple in Ohio City and we double our money. It just depends. But the private sector has to be involved, every step of the way, otherwise it's just gonna be too regressive.
Okay. Vice President Jones.
I just wanted to reemphasize that because that was a really important question from Councilwoman Baker. The private sector, the banks in particular, the need for credit. We have done, as you mentioned, rehab. Now we've done a significant amount of demolition, but the next phase is rehab. How do you fix what's there, and just the full? I won't go too deeply into it, but the private sector has a significant part why we are where we are now. The failure to extend credit. Redlining that has happened in this community, and the private sector and their need to come to the table and all the creative ways that we can do that to make stronger partners out of our local banks. That is certainly something that has to be discussed and implemented.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion, is there a motion to move ordinance 2018-0012 to the full council for second reading?
So move.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Schwan and seconded by Councilman Gallagher to move ordinance 2018-0012 with a favorable recommendation to the full council for second reading. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. It is so recommended. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chairman, members of the council, thank you.
Let you ask questions first. Okay, we now move on to the next item, the discussion, which is the update on the Metro Health System budget, and I'm going to depart from usual protocol because one or a couple of members have to leave shortly for other appointments, so I'm going to ask if anybody would like to ask any questions before we begin. Councilman John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, the one that's on the hot button for most people involves the Metro Health expanding in the legislation to go into multiple county area, and what assurances do we have that 100% of all county funds will never go outside of the county?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the question. As I proceed over the next few minutes, I think it will highlight, hopefully it'll address your question as to how we're spending our money and how the $32.4 million in essence is not going outside of the county. So that's actually part of the presentation in the next few minutes, so if I'll probably be there in about 5 minutes if that's okay.
No, I saw that there. I just wanted you to put your words on the
So yes, the $32.4 million will be used for only patient care in Cuyahoga County.
100%.
100%.
Anyone else at this point? Oh. Okay, go ahead.
Staying on that topic, because it's really, with Councilman Schron, I'm concerned about that too. In your presentation, or is there any kind of reporting process that shows us exactly where those $32.4 million are spent? Only because we need to be mindful of those dollars now could possibly go, even though I hear you that they will not, but in a checks and balance system of understanding where county money goes, will there be something a little bit more than what you've been giving us to date? Only because we can then be accountable for those dollars and be able to say, no, absolute, those $32.4 million are not, because these are the different places that they went. Is that part of your presentation today, or is that a question that is just there, or?
Yes, ma'am. I believe as part of the presentation, you will see the care that is provided in Cuyahoga County, and the $32.4 million represents a portion of the overall care that Metro Health is providing to the residents of Cuyahoga County. If we would like, if we need to, or speak to the funding mechanics, I'm more than happy to speak to the funding mechanics as well as it relates to the transfer of funds between the county and also Metro Health. So I'm more than happy to address that as we proceed during the discussion.
Okay. I'm going to provide a brief orientation. We are going to get the legislation for the Metro Health budget at the next council meeting. To expedite the process, we're holding an informal hearing at today's meeting. And the county council has the opportunity to approve the Metro Health budget. We also have the opportunity to change the Metro Health budget. If we do not change it, then at the end of the year, it would become effective regardless of whether we actually approved it or not. But if we make changes, the changes would affect that budget. So it's somewhat of a formality and somewhat not. It's kind of in between. So with that orientation as to the process, I would ask if you would state your name for the record, and you can go ahead with your presentation.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Craig Richmond. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the Metro Health System, and I'm here to present before you the Metro Health System 2019 operating budget. What I first wanted to start the discussion with is just to share that over the past several years, Metro Health has demonstrated consistency with our strategies to improve community access, manage population health, meaning a focus on both prevention and wellness, and be the highest value provider in its marketplace. As you can see based on this slide, Metro Health is providing care with convenience, as demonstrated for what we were doing in 2012 and what we are projected to do in 2019. Almost everyone in Cuyahoga County is now within a 10-minute drive of Metro Health care. What I wanted to share with you now is Metro Health's community benefit, our 2017 community benefit, and we anticipate that the 2017 community benefit will be similar to 2018. As you can see, that Metro Health provides over $231 million of community benefit. 74% of that community benefit, $171 million, is related to patient care. 89% of that $171 million was to Cuyahoga County residents. You can also see that the $231 million represents approximately 20.2% of Metro Health's overall operating expenses. That represents 2.1 times the national average, which is 9.7%. So through Metro Health's outstanding efficiency, we generate $120 million more in annual community benefit above that of a typical hospital. As demonstrated on this slide right here, you can see all these dots within Cuyahoga County. There are more than 630,000 dots on this slide that represent patient encounters, also equivalent to a patient visit. So in essence, you can see the concentration of where all these patient encounters take place. So again, there's over 630,000 patient encounters that are represented right here on this slide within Cuyahoga County. What I thought would be of interest, and this goes back, I would say, to probably some of the beginning questions, I wanted to give you some patient care statistics associated with the annual Health and Human Services Levy support. So as I mentioned on the prior slide, Metro Health provided over $171 million of free and subsidized care in 2017. As I mentioned, 89% of it, so $152.1 million, was to Cuyahoga County residents, and $19.2 million was to non-Cuyahoga County residents. Of that $152.1 million that was provided to Cuyahoga County residents, $32.4 million was supported by the Health and Human Services Levy, which represents about 21% of the overall $152 million. Metro Health supported $119.7 million of that $152.1 million. In Cuyahoga County, free and subsidized care was provided to approximately 189,000 unique patients. So these are not encounters, these are the number of unique patients. Approximately 29,000 was for the uninsured, and approximately 159,000 was to the underinsured. And then you can see below just some of the overall patient care statistics. You can see the number of hospital discharges associated with the population, the number of patient days, the number of clinic visits, emergency visits, and the overall surgeries. By March of 2017, Metro Health had provided the free and subsidized care to the Cuyahoga County residents equal to the annual Health and Human Services Levy support of the $32.4 million. So within the first 3 months of the calendar year, Metro Health had already provided the free and subsidized care to Cuyahoga County residents equal to the amount that we receive. And then what I want to share, similar to 2017, Metro Health had provided the free and subsidized care to Cuyahoga County residents equal to the annual Health and Human Services Levy support by March of 2018. So 2018 is trending very much like 2017. Now jumping into a little bit into the overall budget, and I wanted to share how we're going to achieve our operating income of approximately $48 million. So Metro Health in 2019 we need to generate, and we will generate, operating performance of $259 million. As you can see, the $231 million of community benefit, we receive $32.4 million of county support. Metro Health is making an investment of $199 million. We do face federal and state reimbursement cuts. So when we take the $259 million of operating performance, less the community benefit, plus the support that we receive, minus the government cuts, that in essence gets us to our $48 million of operating income. And the $48 million of operating income is aligned to meet the financial obligations that we committed to the capital markets. So to highlight some of our operating budget constructs, our adjusted operating income target for 2019 is to $47.6 million. So that's rounded to the $48 million that you just saw on the prior slide. That also represents an operating margin of 4%. Our adjusted earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization target is $106.6 million. That represents an operating EBITDA margin of approximately 8.9%. Our operating performance ratios at the projected levels, they have been set at the targets to meet our financial obligations and also exceed the medians for our credit rating agencies. As I mentioned before, we have federal and state reimbursement reductions. Also, we will continue to enhance access from new locations, programs, and initiatives. This is through our community hospitals, our new providers, and also clinical programs, as well as various process and performance improvements. Also, we will continue to make significant and increasing investments in our community benefit programs. And then also, we are very focused on, and I use the word transformational, cost improvement through operational efficiencies. What this slide demonstrates, and if you look at the 2019 targets, so it's in the middle to the far right of the page, you can see again that is where our $47.6 million target is. The reason that we lay out it in this format is because that is our target of $47.6 million, but we also know there are things throughout the year that potentially could drive you towards the low end and also a high end of your overall operating performance. So for example, on the low end, we do manage and we will continue to manage, but we are also very much aware of the increasing pharmaceutical costs. We're also aware of growth in various medical supply costs. On the high end, we also know that there's opportunities. We do participate in a lot of value-based programs, and we do know there's opportunities for us to realize shared savings from these value-based reimbursement programs. So just to demonstrate that we do have a target of $47.6 million, which is our budget, but we also very much know that there could be a low end and a high end. And then lastly, the following two slides were just to highlight for everyone as to where we've been and where we're going. And where we've been able to go over the past couple of years truly is due to the effectiveness of Metro Health strategy, which I know we've had the opportunity to address you before in the various occasions. So as you can see, where we talk about the total operating revenue, the 2019 T stands for the 2019 target. You can see our top line growth, and then our adjusted operating income, you can clearly see our bottom line growth. And then lastly, our adjusted EBITDA, which is the earnings before interest, depreciation, amortization. Also, you can reference it as operating cash flow. There's the $107 million or the $106.6 million for 2019. Clearly, what we continue to keep our eye on is that in the future we will have our maximum annual debt service will be $63.6 million, and we continue to have ongoing investments within our facilities and operations. And then lastly, we're just showing you as well as to how we project our unrestricted cash and investments to grow in 2019. So, Mr. Chairman, if I could entertain any questions.
Any questions from my colleagues? Ms. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the slide that's the operating budget constructs, you There's a bullet point, significant increasing investments in community benefits programs. Can you touch on that just a little bit more? Maybe talk about where or how, if it doesn't compromise you in any strategic
No, ma'am.
planning type of way?
So where we continue to make investments is, we continue to make investments in our trauma programs, our trauma recovery services. We continue to make investments, or we still have a pretty costly investment as it relates to our tuberculosis clinic. We are also, as you know, the only provider in the state of Ohio that's been designated as a Ebola center. So these are just some of the areas where we continue to make investments, and then also investments within the local community as well.
Okay, thank you. And then the other slide that I was curious about, and I think it may be reflected in slide number, maybe reflected in slide number 5, but in slide number 2, you talked about the $120 million in community benefits above the typical hospitals. You gave us a breakdown of the 152. Would that be reflective? Would that be the same as the 120, that breakdown as far as services, patients, visits, or would that number be a little different? You follow me?
I believe I do. I'm just, the question was, of the $171 million in patient care, we provide $152 million to Cuyahoga County residents. And then there's $32.4 million that is supporting the $152.1 million. So, Council.
So the question is, you're above, you're $120 million above in community benefits. Is that number reflective of that slide in number 5?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I understand your question. What this demonstrates is that we are 10.5%, if you will. So the 20.2 less the 9.7. Okay, we're providing we're 10.5%, if you will, above. Okay, that 9.7%. That 10.5 represents that $120 million.
And if
Okay,
you had
so-
to break down the $120 million, what would that look like? That's what I'm asking. Would it be how many patients, how much services, how many surgeries in community benefits are you delivering?
So what that would represent, Councilwoman Brown, is that would represent the stats that I have right here on the page. So when you take a look at the almost 190,000 unique patients, the discharges and so forth, what that represents is the $152 million that we're providing to Cuyahoga County residents. And then there's $32.4 million of that amount that we are receiving from the Health and Human Services levy. So then Metro Health is funding the rest of the $119.7 million, which averages approximately about $10 million a month from Metro Health System.
Okay, I got that, but and maybe I can ask you offline. I was just trying to see if you could break down the 120 million. Like, I know you're over and above and delivering in all of those categories. Well, but I guess it's reflective of those same numbers in the $152 million category.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We got there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Ms. Baker.
Yes, thank you, and I don't want to be redundant, and maybe I'm not quite hearing it correctly, but of the 152 million, if you take away the 32.4 and we have 119.7 left, and I know the assurances to us are 32.4, can we anticipate that the 119.7 that is now being spent on Cuyahoga County residents, would that 19.2 that is going to non-Cuyahoga County residents increase? Can we see less of that number that is now staying in Cuyahoga County decrease and go more into the line that says 19.2? Out of the 171.3 million, 152 was to Cuyahoga County residents.
Correct.
19.2 of that is non-county.
Correct.
That 152, take away the 32.4 that you're assuring us will not go anywhere but here.
Correct.
Will the balance of that also stays here, except for the 19.2, will that 19.2 increase now that we can go out of county? And will we see our own county that you're not guaranteeing out of the HHS levy also diminish?
Yeah, when you're
Is that
asking about the
question-
night,
yeah.
I believe I understand that question. Councilwoman Baker, that number could go up or could go down. It just depends on the type of patients that present themselves to the Metro Health system. What I wanted to demonstrate here is how the Metro Health system is providing a significant amount of community benefit, and that the $32.4 million is covering, in essence, about 21% of the overall community benefit that we're providing within Cuyahoga County. So I can't tell you whether that would go up or down. It depends on the type of patients that present themselves. You have patients all the time that could they might, in essence, they have an opportunity to secure a job, and now they're coming into your institution with insurance. So it could go up or down. At this point in time, when we're back here next year, we'll be able to highlight for you what we were able to see in 2018. But what I wanted to share that in 2018 is following similar trends to what we see in 2017.
I understand that. I guess my question is, are we at risk to have the money that is now being spent here in Cuyahoga County, not including the 32.4, at risk? Because there may be needs outside this county that will be funded by those
No,
dollars.
it is not at risk. What I'm sharing here is it's not at risk. Metro Health will continue to live by its mission and will continue to support the residents of Cuyahoga County. So no, I can assure you it's not at risk.
Okay.
And then, if I may, just to help understand maybe some of the funding mechanics, okay, how the process works. Cuyahoga County, we receive wire transfers from the annual Health and Human Services levy support in monthly increments of about $2.7 million. Typically, we receive it at the end of each month. Our first payment in 2017 was actually received in February 1st, of 2017. The funds received from Cuyahoga County are wired directly into a separate Metro Health operating account designated for the Health and Human Services levy support held with PNC Bank. As free and subsidized care is provided to Cuyahoga County residents, the funds are periodically transferred, to Metro Health's primary operating account to cover the shortfall in the cost of care. And then lastly, again, similar to 2017, Metro Health has provided the free and subsidized care to Cuyahoga County residents equal to the Metro Health levy support by March of 2018. So after the first 3 months of the year, in essence, that $32.4 million has covered care for the Cuyahoga County residents. So just wanted to share a little bit of the background as to how the funding mechanics work.
Council President Brady.
Okay, I saw that Councilwoman Simon had her hand up, and she's if this is the same line of questioning, then I don't want to break up the.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Mr.
I just wanted to applaud Metro for really being careful and good stewards of the subsidy from the county. When we came in as the new government, we asked that this money be earmarked and tracked. And there's never been any second guessing on your stewardship of this money. And I don't know what would change now simply because we're expanding in an open marketplace outside the boundaries of the county. So I'm totally comfortable with your continuing to do the job you've done and make sure that this will be used as we asked it to be used. And so I don't really have a question. I just wanted to assure my council colleague that she wasn't here at the beginning when we really put a mandate out there, and it's been followed. So nothing's changed. I don't think now there's going to be some spurious activity to try to undermine that. You've been great partners, and I'm really happy to continue to support what you're doing in terms of being competitive to be able to bring us revenue, considering the threat of the Medicaid cuts that we really need to remain a viable institution. As I always say, it's the heart of the county is Metro, and so I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess sort of along similar lines, I just wanted to congratulate you guys again for the incredible transformation project that you're bearing to almost $1 billion of a transformation project that is so important to this county and so important to the community that you reside in Greater Cleveland. I did that with very little help from the county. This administration of Metro has been an amazingly ambitious but successful administration. And we've been here now long enough to see that since the new CEO came in some years ago. Also, I wanted to thank Metro for agreeing with the county to help us provide services in our jails across the county. Not something that Metro needed to do, had to do, something that wasn't even really in their interest to do. But they've stepped up to do that, and the truth is, without Metro, that project wouldn't even be able to be successful. We absolutely couldn't have done it without Metro. And that is just something that's been accomplished recently. So I just wanted to both congratulate you and add to Councilwoman Simon's remarks about how well that you've done and how proud we are of you.
Ms. Baker, then Gallagher.
Yes, and I agree. For the couple of years that I've been here, I've seen some remarkable work done by Metro. You're an asset to this county, and certainly am appreciative of your work. My only concern is that the dynamics have changed, and that dollars could be spent outside this county, and that is just something that we that are overlooking the budget and are responsible for the dollars have perhaps more than we've had in the past, only because of that dynamic. Not questioning anything that is being done irresponsibly. It's just a checks and balance because of the dynamics that have changed. That's my only concern. I don't anticipate seeing anything that's unusual, only that when we are talking about those dollars now because of the state law that changed, that we can reiterate where that money's going a little bit more definitely than we are now, because it has always stayed within the county except for the $9.2 million that you have outlined. So that's my only concern here, is the different dynamics that have happened that hadn't been in this before. This is new. That's my only concern.
Well, and again, thank you for expressing your concerns, and I would just like to reiterate again, the $32.4 million has always stayed in Cuyahoga County and will continue to stay in Cuyahoga County for providing the patient care to our residents.
Councilman Gallagher.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, I don't think it's an unusual request to be concerned about that. The history of this committee and this council has been somewhat, some would say, aggressive in the earlier years. Others, I think, on the administrative side, the previous administration would say intrusive. But we've always been careful in where the dollars are going. And I think especially with Dr. Boutros coming on board, Metro has taken an absolute leap into a new century of providing health care. And rather than have the borders of Cuyahoga County provide services outside the county while protecting the dollars that are afforded to those inside the county, the possibilities, I think, are endless right now as to where Metro is going to go. As to what the council president said, I couldn't be more happy with what Metro has provided to us here in the county. You have, quite honestly, saved our bacon on a number of times, have provided services above and beyond that I could even have thought of, and specifically at the jails, and continue to do so. And we look forward to our relationship being maintained as is in a very positive manner. So I would just want to thank you and the administration and all the people at Metro for what they provide to us and our people that we represent.
Thank you. I have 3 questions.
Yes, sir.
The first one is, how many patients are there that are uninsured or underinsured from Cuyahoga County that are served in like 2017?
Approximately 189,000 uninsured and underinsured unique patients that were served that live in Cuyahoga County
Per year?
in 2017.
Right, okay. That's a lot. Second question is, the $19.2 million that provided care outside of Cuyahoga County even before this new state legislation passed, how did that occur prior to this legislation?
We've always served patients outside of Cuyahoga County. So these are patients that Could be individuals that are employed within organizations that reside within Cuyahoga County. Could be patients who were, or could be individuals who were not provided care at other locations outside of Cuyahoga County. So they sought care at the Metro Health System, and the Metro Health System, as part of our mission, is we do not deny care to anybody. So that's in essence how that could have happened.
Okay. And the third question is, I'd like if you could share somewhat of the size and scope of what you plan to do with this new authority to operate outside of Cuyahoga County. I mean, is this something that you foresee a few small initiatives working around the edges, mostly on the borders, or is this something that you anticipate being pretty widespread and truly morphing into a regional rather than a county hospital?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question, and Dr. Boutros would welcome a further conversation around House Bill 111.
That was not an answer. What kind of information can you provide?
I don't have any information to provide at this point in time, Mr. Chairman.
Can you get back to us? And I think we should have some minimal idea of the size and scale of what we're talking about here. I mean, right now it could be anything.
And as you just suggested, we would be more than happy, and Dr. Boutros would be best positioned to have additional conversation regarding the question that you posed.
Okay, we'll pursue that offline.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice-
just a comment. Maybe we could also have our former colleague, State Representative Greenspan, come in and tell us the whole background, because he walked this legislation through the state government. So we've got someone we know who could really give us some good answers on this as well.
Okay, that's an excellent point. Vice President Jones.
I just wanted to echo the comments of the Council President Gallagher and all my colleagues. We know the good work that Metro has done, particularly on the jails. And we want you to know we understand what you bring to the table, and you certainly have my support.
Thank you.
Anything else? If the committee is satisfied and we feel ready that the Metro Health budget could be approved, the council president could schedule it for first reading adoption at the next council meeting on November 13th. I would wonder if there's anybody that feels that more discussion is needed. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Well, I'm not on the committee, so I can't tell you how the committee feels, but I get getting a consensus because of the comments that have been made. We have handled this, and I don't want to minimize anybody's questions or anybody's point of view, but we've handled this annual budget pretty routinely every year. And I don't think this year is different just because of this other issue. And I wouldn't want it to appear that anything's different because we have questions about a House bill that was passed last year that allows the hospital to operate outside the county. So I would, as council president, very much appreciate if members of this county would forward this legislation to the full council for passage at the next meeting.
Okay. Ms. Simon.
I'll make a motion that this,
No motion is necessary.
okay.
The legislation is not before us. It's only an informal
Well,
discussion.
we agree to
But I
introduce
have
it.
but I'm not hearing anything from my colleagues that suggests otherwise. Okay? Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. That includes our informal discussion of the Metro Health budget. Does anybody have any miscellaneous business?
I do. After our earlier discussion, I'd like to share with my colleagues that there is an exhibit, an interactive exhibit called Undesigning the Red Line. So as we follow on the conversation that we've had previously, it's a tour where you, again, follow the history of redlining and the implications and impact that it has today. It's located right next to our senior and adult services, in the same building as our senior and adult services at the Mount Pleasant Now facility on Kinsman in my district. And they will be reaching out to us all and would love to have those that would like to come and have this tour, and it could be very enlightening as we move into other legislation.
Well, that is certainly a tour that I would like to participate in. I know that the vestiges of that old redlining is still very prevalent and has continuing effects to this day. So I look forward to hearing when we can have an opportunity to do that. I will offer one item of miscellaneous business just to make everybody aware that that 2 weeks from today, on the 19th, at this time at 1 o'clock, we're going to have the third quarter financial update from the administration. And it's actually even more than the third quarter update, because this is normally when we would get the off year, the update for the second year of the budget. But because of the fact of the installation of the ERP financial system, we agreed to the administration's request that the budget update not be done at this time, but the administration is still required under the county code to provide us at this time an update of the financial plans, the forecasts, the schedules, the capital improvements program, to update all of that data that was in the budget book for the last biennial budget. So we're going to receive that information on the 19th and be able to ask questions about it. It's actually due by county code to be presented on the 13th at the council meeting. So you should have it a number of days ahead of the meeting, so everybody can review it and come prepared to ask questions. And we're expecting that in January that the executive will send us a special fiscal resolution that will contain the budget changes that we need to balance the 2019 budget. So I would invite everybody, finance committee member or not, everybody to come on the 19th for that important meeting. And with that, seeing nothing else, there is nothing else that holds our attention, so this meeting stands adjourned. Thanks, everyone, for your time and attention.